Welcome back, Wargamers, to the chaotic and unforgiving wastes of the 8 points here in the Mortal Realms, as we tackle a listener question that was recently sent to me that kind of piqued my curiosity a bit. And simply put, it is, what is the difference between a Chaos Lord and a member of Archaeon's Varanguard? So I thought today we would chat a bit more about the Varanguard, and in doing so, seek to answer this question. So simply put, what are the Varanguard? Well, actually, there's not a ton of information. It's kind of scant, it's scattered about, but these are the warlords and the champions and the conquerors of realms that work directly below and with Archaeon, the ever-chosen Grand Marshal of the Apocalypse. And I use his full title there to prove the point, because it's incredibly significant that you get to, be a part of his little entourage. And even though I say the word little, that's only relative, because there's actually no cap or a limit on how many Varanguard there are. They are without number. It's just more of a status and a place rather than like a limited offer, kind of a job. You see, all who dedicate themselves to chaos are on their own individual path to glory. They're constantly competing with one another for the favor of a dark god, or a plural pantheon, dark gods. But for the Varanguard, the only lord that they seek the attention and kind of affirmation from is Archaeon. Each one is a veteran of countless campaigns, destroyers of nations, enslavers of whole continents. They ride with their lord, or often separate from him, carried along by these, hellish demonic steeds, and they're just so fascinating. It's almost like they're so evil, they're so infused with chaos energy, everything kind of bends around them. They can actually tear open rifts and kind of travel through them and kind of go along, say, the winds of chaos is kind of the idea that I'm getting here. But I absolutely love it. They, in the lore within the Battle Tome of Slaves to Darkness, they have this presence that is very similar to Archaeon, which, if you know, whenever Archaeon shows up in a book or a campaign supplement, he absolutely steals the scene. And these are supposed to be his lieutenants that have very much the same kind of presence. From a high level, these are the best of the best who have thrown in their lot with Archaeon and been branded by his mark. And that's like having a badge that asserts your dominance over every other Chaos army that there is. While they may have started their path to glory in dedication to one of the other Chaos gods, specifically, let's say you were a champion and you threw your lot in with Nurgle, at some point, you switched and you now have total allegiance to the Ever-Chosen. At some point in their questing and campaigning, they received what they perceived to be a vision. Perhaps it was the shape of Archaeon's silhouette appearing in a pool of blood spatter, or dreams and portents and so on. This event is known as the Call of Archaeon, and if you want some simple, fun reads that get a sense of what this is like, there's actually a great collection of short stories from Black Library. They're all collated into one big thing called the Call of Archaeon series, and I really did enjoy them. Now, I'm going to read this first line from the Battle Tome about becoming one of these Varanguard to give you a sense of how difficult it really is. Perhaps 1 in 1,000 champions will possess sufficient strength to undertake the trials of the Varanguard. Of these, 1 in 10,000 may prove themselves worthy to join Archaeon's elite. Known as the Knights of Ruin, they are amongst the most feared warriors of chaos. When they ride in force, even the gods take notice. So right off the bat, we see that Varanguard are essentially like next level Chaos Lords, right? These are champions. They fight, they rise in stature, glory, and power. And if they're deemed worthy, an invitation to these trials is offered to them, right? 1 in 1,000 will get this invitation. That's the Call of Archaeon. And only 1 in 10,000 of those will make it. Now, you can decide for yourself if that's like a literal thing or if they're just kind of being crazy about it, but that would mean, what is it, like if I'm doing the math correct, isn't it like 1 in 100,000 or something like that? It would be something like that. It would absolutely be insane. The point I'm getting at, even if I did my math wrong, we're setting the stakes extremely high, right? While the Varanguard themselves don't have a cap on their number, they are technically, numberless, beyond measure, whatever, their entry into their ranks is harrowing, to say the least. And this just tells you, honestly, if the odds are really that crazy, where so few make it in there, and the fact that there's so many Varanguard tells you, quite frankly, just how many people live in the realms that are Chaos Lords. It must be a ton. Now, once you're inside the ranks of the Varanguard, let's say you pass your trial and you're like feeling good, you're feeling awesome, you'll be assigned to one of 8 circles. And circles are basically like the force organization of Archaeon's core units. So all the Varanguard are divided into 8 what he calls circles. We would call them like units or battalions or something like that. And each one of these has a different purpose that we're going to dive into here. The first circle is the Swords of Chaos. The first circle of the Vanguard ride into battle at the side of the Ever-Chosen himself as his Dark Champions. Now, essentially this means these are his veterans, right? These are the best of the best. You always want to be in the first circle. The second one are all about torture and fear. So if he wants to come into an area and bring absolute despair to the forces that reside there, he's going to send the second circle. And that's an incredibly important one, because if you break the morale of an army, you can go a long way in defeating it. The third circle are the Scions of Darkness. Now, their role is a bit vague, but the idea is I get the sense of they're all about infiltration, right? They're black-souled riders. They basically look like night that's given form, and they just kind of move with the shadows. That's how I imagine what they do. The fourth circle are the Reavers of Chaos, and they're all about burning nations, torturing people. This is if you're going to send the second circle in to make everyone scared, you send in the fourth to burn everything behind them. Leave no stone standing. The fifth circle is the Scourges of Fate, and these are the ones who single out champions. Okay, so they single out the heads of emperors and kings and all these things, and basically if Archaeon wants a society defeated, it will target all of the best and the brightest within it and crumple it that way. The sixth circle is the Blades of Desolation, and they are all about siege. So they're all about taking down fortresses and towers and all that kind of stuff. Whatever the biggest, hell-forged thing that has ever been erected, these guys are designed to crumple it to dust. The seventh circle are the Bane Sons, and these are cannibalistic in nature. They basically gain powers of chaos by constant sacrifice and eating of flesh. And lastly, the eighth circle, no one actually knows the name of except for Archaeon. Nobody really knows anything about them. And no one has ever lived to tell the tale of what they do. To be honest, I kind of see that as kind of a blank slate so that you can write whatever you want if you're a Slaves to Darkness player, which, Games Workshop tends to do that. There's always like a Marine chapter left blank or something like that. Now, as far as their role in Archaeon's army, they do quite a few things in addition to kind of the specialties that we mentioned in the circles. First and foremost, they act as his most elite shock troops. These soldiers, these Varanguard, were the first ones to step foot in the All Points. Now that's what became the 8 points later on. So when he invaded and set a line in the sand and said, I am now the conqueror of this place, the 8 points, and it became his realm and all this kinds of stuff, they were the one leading the charge. And of course, they act as his personal bodyguard and retinue. So if Archaeon's there's some Varanguard with him, probably from the first circle, his veterans that act as kind of his commanders and coordinators and all that kind of stuff. But in addition to that, they also serve several non-combat roles. They act as the authority and the emissaries of Archaeon out and abroad. One of the things that we really mentioned and stressed in the Realm Gate War series was that the biggest weakness of Archaeon is that he cannot be everywhere. However, to get around that, he has this entire leadership system. These Varanguard are all like lieutenants, and they can take his authority any place he goes. So if he sets a group of them, say in Gur, and is like, you need to defend this, they have the authority of Archaeon to do whatever it takes to defend it. And I'd like to see that in action, right? Show me a Varanguard going to a campaign front and immediately taking control of all the disparate chaos forces. Now, less often, they can also act as his personal scouts or assassins. So he can dispatch Varanguard in just a group to go reclaim a special item or end someone's life, something like that. If there's a very particular mission that needs to be done by experts, he will send them. And honestly, that's about it, which is really a bummer in terms of what we know, because I think they have the ability to be some of the most compelling characters in the lore. And that's simply because they're not Archaeon, right? They can die, so there are, I feel like, more stakes here. If, say, Black Library wrote a series that followed one over the course of a campaign or something, that would be so interesting. So, to really drive home the answer to our initial question of Varanguard versus Chaos Lords, essentially this is the ultimate goal of a Chaos Lord's path to glory, assuming they are called by Archaeon. Other lords see demonhood from their patron god as the ultimate prize. So like if you want to become a demon prince of Nurgle kind of a thing if you're following Nurgle, but this is as high as it goes if you are going undivided and you've aligned yourself with Archaeon. You can fight your way up to the first circle of the Varanguard, but there's nothing higher than that except for Archaeon himself. And so with that, let's talk about why these guys are cool, even though there's honestly not a ton of lore information or stories from their perspective. To me, the seconds in command are awesome because they can die and still be dramatic. Like we can have characters that we get attached to or we begin to understand the motivations of, and they can still end in tragic deaths. There's good stories to be told. The fact that it's made very clear they are numberless, they can kind of be everywhere, and that kind of is nice with a little bit of narrative freedom because you can have a situation where a Varanguard comes in and it's not absolutely unheard of or, just totally plot twisting. There's enough of them to spread out. And if you know me and you know we've been watching the channel for a while, I love any and all path to glory narratives, right? All these guys fighting to conquer and gain glory, and this is what that looks like if you do it for Archaeon. But, kind of a sweet cherry on top of that narrative, I like the fact that he has to call you, right? It's not just you on your own trying to gain favor, it's like he has to see you and want you. It's not like trying to get the gods' attention in Chaos factions. Instead, you naturally accrue glory just by surviving in these terrible, unforgiving lands, and he will reach out eventually. I really did enjoy that Call of Archaeon series. It follows a few different factions who all hear the call and are striving to get to this challenge and that kind of stuff. There's some fantastic fight scenes and just really cool dialogue from the various warbands. They're quite a bit of fun. But that being said, I want more stories about them when they're fully ranked up, not just like their tale of ascension, how they got there. I want a story where Lords of Chaos are all fighting about how to prosecute a war, and Archaeon sends one of these guys to take control. Because then we would get to see how all those different personalities work, because as Chaos Lords, they're always conniving, trying to assert dominance and power and play on each other, do some backstabbing, but this man has, or man or woman, there's no distinction here, has the mark of Archaeon. Okay, so there's a fear and a respect, and all those emotions are all tied together. I think it could be really interesting. And with that, friends, I hope we answered the question. It's just a next level of Chaos Lord. So thank you all so much for watching and listening, and I hope to catch you in my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Happy wargaming. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was made possible by the folks over here to the left. These are my top supporters over here on YouTube and on Patreon that keep this channel going. If you'd like to learn more about how to become a supporter and get some cool things in the process, like exclusive pictures and interactions with me and get your questions answered here on the channel, go ahead and click any of the links down below or the join button on the community page over on YouTube. Regardless of your choice, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me with this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Happy wargaming.